Let everybody see here. HVAC making noise. Go. All right, welcome to episode 15 of the Zone's All Access, hosted by the Sports Center. We have to thank our team of marketing partners, our premier partners, Whitaker Insurance Agency, Walker & Walker Construction, Stay and Play Doggy Daycare, Grooming and More, Hearthside Bank, Value RX Tazewell, and J&S Concrete Pumping. This evening, I have the Voice of Tazewell Speedway, Brady Cupp in the garage. All right, Brady, thanks for coming down. I know it's a long way down here, but I appreciate you. Well, it's been a while since long time since I've been down this way, but yeah, you reached out to me this afternoon, and so I appreciate you inviting me down. I watched some of your shows, and appreciate all you've done for sports in Cleveland County.
Thank you. All right, let's talk about where you grew up at, and did you play sports?
I was born and raised here in Tazewell. I attempted to play sports. Never was sports minded. Neither one of my parents played sports. Played one, I think, when I was maybe fifth, sixth grade. I did 1 year of the basketball league down at the old Civic Center, people used to call it. Tried baseball 1 year.
I thought you played baseball.
Yeah, I did play baseball 1 year. Just wasn't my thing. Then when I was a freshman, some of my friends talked me into trying out for football. I was all of 115 pounds on the best day. It was fun, but I think it was maybe a second or third practice, and that was summer practice, and was doing some kind of drill, and I was a receiver. Anyway, I think I caught the ball, and then Todd Neely, who was a senior at that time, he tackled me and a few other ones, and he got up the bat. I thought, nah, football is not for me. But I enjoyed Cleveland County sports. Used to go quite, going up even when I was even in Esmond Mess, 7th and 8th grade middle school. Used to go to a lot of games, and of course went to every basketball game that I could going through high school.
Did you have a favorite sports you played? Limited, I know, but did you have a favorite that you liked a little bit better than the other?
I love basketball. I grew up in a rural area, Cedar Fork, what we call the holler. There was no kids my age, but I had a basketball goal.
You were in a holler.
Yeah, I was in a holler. It was on a dirt road, and but when we moved there, I think in '78, my dad put up a basketball goal on a tree right there in the road. Hardly anybody traveled that road in those days, and so if I heard somebody coming, I just knew just to get the ball out of the way. But I enjoyed shooting basketball, enjoyed watching football. My dad didn't like football, but I liked watching sports. Our thing was NASCAR. We watched NASCAR, and of course, then that goes back to around the '78, '79 when my dad started taking me to Tazewell Speedway, and I went, okay, this is something I could get into.
Okay, did you have a favorite athlete in a sport?
Loved watching the Boston Celtics back in the '80s, late '70s into the '80s. Loved Larry Bird.
Bird Magic.
Bird Magic. It was hard. I loved watching Magic, and of course Kareem Abdul-Jabbar. I always loved watching him on TV, and so. Yeah. But I guess as far as favorite athlete overall, like that, it would have to be Larry Bird. He's just the best shooter I've ever seen in my life.
Underrated.
Very, very underrated. The Great White Hope. But, I would say Larry Bird.
Okay. You talked a little bit about it, but when did you get bit by the racing bug?
As far as getting really, really bit by it, again, my dad my dad went to Tazewell Speedway the very first race back in '65, and he was very good friends, best friends with Jim Arnwine. But as far as me, I guess the first race I recall going to was around 78, 79. I may have been 7, 8 years old. And that was when it was a flat track. Of course, we could talk about that all night long.
Yeah.
But I remember going out there.
Those pictures are hot.
Yes, very odd to see that. And it was just everyday thing for me because my dad would go out to Jim Arnwine's garage and hang out. I'd watch him work on the race car. We'd go out there. The first few
that's
times,
my next question.
Yeah.
Tell me what it was like helping Jim.
I tell a lot of people that I learned a lot of colorful language that I didn't know anywhere else. But out there on the evening, especially on Friday evenings, Saturday mornings, Dad would go out there and Jim would be working on a race car. Larry Goatman Burke helped as well. Watching those guys work on a race car, listening to those engines fire up, I was like, wow. And then going out there to watch the races, I didn't realize it till later on, but Jim would win quite a bit. But there was guys that Jim would beat that Eddie Carrier Jr., H.E. Vineyard, things like that, that names at that time, I just thought, well, these guys just race here. Those guys are now
Legends.
Hall of Fame members and legends and things like that. And as I got older, stopped kind of going. And then, of course, when I got into high school, I was working when I was a junior in high school. Would still go out there a little bit. And then around 94, 95-ish, my brother was around 11, 12 years old. We started taking him, and my dad started helping. Jim Arwine was still racing then, and so Dad would help him a little bit. And so more I got into that and saw the excitement of that, that's when it really was like, okay, yeah.
Me personally, I learned one thing. Me and my brother was helping Anthony out for a year or so. And there's one, I think it was Sunday race, Sunday afternoon.
Yeah.
And Anthony got spun on turn one by, I think his ex car. I can't remember his name. And I thought, well, Jim's going to go over there and just see if Anthony was okay. So I walked over there with him. About the time I get over there, we get over there, the ex car comes by and he salutes him. I mean, it's not a friendly salute. No. And I'm thinking to myself, I'm over here with Jim, and now I'm going to probably get in a fight. But cooler heads prevail.
Jim was just a wonderful guy. Was always nothing but friendly to me. Was always great to be around. He had a very, very quick temper. Very quick temper. One thing I did see back in those days, a lot of people came to see Jim Arnwine race against Jack Trammell. Those two were very intense rivals. I don't want to say they hated each other, but there was a lot of dislike. But anyway, I remember one time.
As close as it could come.
Yes.
They did become friends.
Yeah, exactly. But they did get to a fight one night, and Jim was one of these. He put everything into his punch, and he swung. I think he was swinging at maybe Jack's brother, and Jim swung so hard he actually, kind of fell, with so much momentum that he fell. But the good old days of those racing, I don't know if we'll ever really get to that again. But those were good days because I tell a lot of people, especially younger people, that guys like Jim and Jack would fight. Later on, you'd have guys like Rick Welch, Leonard Bray. They would fight.
At least once a night.
Yeah, at least once a night. But you would go to Hardee's on Sunday morning. They'd be out there sitting there laughing about it and buying each other breakfast.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, the kids nowadays, they'll be talking about, 2025 being the good old days.
Yeah.
So they'll have their own stories.
They will.
Okay, at some point, you got with our good friend John Roy, and you broadcasted a few Claiborne County High School athletic games. Talk about what it was like to work with John, and just describe what you did on a certain night.
I can't remember. It seems like I've known John all my life, and of course we hung out. And he was a few years older than me. But when I got to be a freshman in high school, he was a junior. But we hung out a lot, and then after he graduated, he went to he was in the Air Force for a couple of years.
Yeah, he was.
When he came back, he was working as a DJ for WFSM A lot of folks don't know that we had a FM rock and roll station for a while.
We did.
I'm a huge rock and roll fan, and John and I are huge music fans, and we could have our own show about that. But we'd hang out with John up at the radio station. We just stayed friends. And a few years after that, I think it was around 96, 97, John started doing football broadcasts for WNTT. And I went and watched him one night. He said, "Hey, I'm starting to do this. I'm having a lot of fun with it. Why don't you come and do it with me?" I was like, "John, I know what I'm doing. Man, just come hang out with me. Let's just have fun with it." And we did, and it just steamrolled from there. Eileen Kraft was so great to us. We didn't, we hardly got paid, but we got to go a lot of places that we never been before. One of the best memories I have was around 90, 97, 98, Sullivan East up in Kingsport. They were added to our district, and I think the first year we played them down here, and back then we didn't have a press box. It was just on the back of the concession stand.
Yep.
We had like a little platform. We had a little roof over us. That was our press box. Well, the next year we went to Sullivan East, and it was Sullivan East homecoming. And so we went up. Yep. So we went up there for it, and they had a nice, big, beautiful press box. We went and sat down and stuff. Well, we get there early to set up, make sure that everything was working right. And we saw these people came in with food, and they were putting on these tables behind us. Well, John and I were starved, and we were like, it's a lot of food. Like, I wonder what that's for. And so anyway, we were probably maybe about an hour from kickoff and time to go on the air. And John said, "Hey, let's go down and grab us something to eat at a concession stand." This lady came up, and she had a huge plate of food, set it down. She goes, "Hey, you guys with Claiborne County?" "Yeah, we're here to do the football broadcast for the radio." "Oh, well, this is our homecoming, and we're going to have a lot of guys up here, a lot of alumni. But you guys make your plate, make yourselves at home." And it didn't tell John looked at, "Hey, you're going to have to ask us twice." So we sat down and made us a big plate. They were very nice to us. Of course, back then, Gatlinburg Pittman and Seymour, even though they were powerhouses, they were, it was good to go there because they always treated us very well. And of course, we tried to do the same when they came to Claiborne County. And then we did that for about 2-3 years. And then we started picking up the basketball. And that's when Dayton Parkey was coaching the lady. Yeah. Made his name. And that was.
I caught a little bit of the broadcast. I think it's posted to YouTube. And yes. I just watched it the other day. I mean, it's audio only, I think. But it was so fun to.
Yes,
to relive.
Those were just great days of watching those. The girls, the girls were the better. I don't want to say the better team, but they had a much better record. But the boys' teams back then were very good, but
very competitive. Yeah,
yes, very competitive, and a hard district too. They had a lot of hard teams to play. But yeah, especially the year that when Katasha Brown was a senior and they went to state. I was working full time. And I didn't get to make the trip to the state when they got eliminated there. When supposedly Katasha Brown stepped on the 3-point line, they only counted as a 2-pointer. But it was so amazing. And talk about Dayton Park, he was just a great coach, great guy. He would come up and talk to us a lot. There was one night that I was running late, and I couldn't make it. Well, John, he came up. It's the boys' game with John. So a lot of great memories of John Roy traveling up down the road. Of course, life happens. John got married, of course, had a child, and I started working more. When we talk, I don't get to see John as much. He's on the road. I know he goes to a lot. He's a physical therapist now, respiratory therapist, and he has been out in the Midwest helping some. So, but when I do see John, I'm like, man, wouldn't it be great to go back and do a game?
Okay. I have a personal favorite game that I've ever covered, and it was with the sports region with you guys. And that was the Mud Bowl. If you were there, you know what I'm talking about.
Yes.
It was the two rivals in the county going against each other, and it rained and it poured. And you talked about having the roof over your head some.
Yeah.
I didn't that night, and I got soaked, but I enjoyed every bit of it.
Yeah.
What's your favorite?
I guess the most memorable one was there was a game that Claiborne County played up at Chucky Doak, which is kind of between Greenville and Jonesboro. John couldn't make it. I can't remember the reason, but John couldn't make it. He said, "Hey, Brady, you can do it on your own." Went up there, and the press box was worse than the one we had at Claiborne County. And it had been raining, and it didn't know it at the time, and our players didn't know at the time, but that track was, the field was very soft, and there were holes that Chucky Doak's players knew to kind of stay away from. Well, our Claiborne County players didn't know. Yeah. A lot of messed up ankles that night. It was a very rough game. So that one's one that sticks in my mind. But I guess the best memory I have is going back to the '99 season with the Lady Blue Devils when they went to state and they were undefeated during the regular season. That was just amazing to watch.
Okay, pivoting more to racing. How much do you like being the voice at Tazewell Speedway?
It is the first few years I did it. It was scary.
Oh,
and it was, now it's just it's a pleasure and a privilege. As we mentioned before, I didn't play sports. I still don't play sports. I'm terrible at golf. I don't fish. So racing became my passion. Being an announcer and being around the racetrack. It all goes back 2003 when I'd been out there a few times and was still helping. My dad and I were helping Mitch Houston. He won the track champion there in '99 with the Thunder and Lightning class. Then he he was a truck driver at the time and started working more. But I still went out there and watched races. 2003, I think February of that year, the owner at that time, John and Lori Thompson, they sold the track to a gentleman named Bill Webb. Knew very little about him.
Yep. Story I've told you before. They had come to me and asked me if I knew somebody that would do it and do a good job, and I said Brady Cupp.
Yep. Well, and they did that, and I heard that they had a new owner. We mentioned our good friend Tater Petty. Tater reached out to me. He said, "Hey, did you hear Tazewell's got a new owner?" Yeah. Well, hey, I met him the other day, and he's looking for an announcer, and he said, "Me and Alan put your name." I'm like, why? And he said, "Well, you do the radio broadcast for the football and basketball. You grew up there. You ought to go talk to him." I'm like, man, I give it myself. Not that I had a great social life.
Was you really reluctant?
I really was.
Wow.
I was like, I don't want to give up my Saturday nights and things like that. I was dating a young lady at the time. I was like, I don't want to do it. But anyway, so I think the next day, Tater said, "Hey, did you give Bill a call?" I was like, no, I just don't think it's for me. That afternoon, I get a phone call. "Hey, Brady, my name is Bill Webb. I just bought Tazewell Speedway. I have no idea what I've got myself getting into this, but I need an announcer." He said, "I think this was maybe on a Monday or Tuesday. I've got my first race of the season coming up Saturday night. I need some help." I was like, Anyway, he said, "Hey, come out here and talk to me. Are you in town?" I was like, "Sure." He said, "Just come out here and talk to me." And he said, "You come recommended. I know you don't know me." But anyway, he said, "Can you just help me out one night?" Sure. And so had no idea what I was doing. But I took what little expertise I had from basketball and football. And it was a big race. I believe it wasn't a sanctioned race, but it was a big race that paid maybe $5,000, $10,000. And Bill Webb had a guy, a very famous announcer by the name of Ozzie Altman, who at one time was the track announcer for Atlanta Motor Speedway, Charlotte Motor Speedway. He actually did some NASCAR broadcast. He came in to do that race, and Bill said, "Hey, Ozzie's going to be here." I'm like, "Oh my gosh, you're getting a big name." But anyway, we did that race together. I did the local classes. Ozzie did the super late models. Of course, he knew them. After everything was over with, I'm like, yeah, I'm done. Nobody want me to come back. And Ozzie was getting ready to go. And he said, "Hey, you did a great job." He says, "This is your first night out here." I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "You did a really good job." He goes, "Bill's going to, he's going to do some good things here. You need to stick with this." And I went, And he said, no, I'm not joshing you. So, that went on. Of course, Bill only owned the track for 1 year, had a great time. And then he just up and kind of disappeared. John and Lori Thompson, who had owned the track before that, John and Lori Thompson took it back over, did that, stuck with it. And it was during that year, 2004, that the former Battle of the Bluegrass series came to Tazewell. That time they were sponsored by Lucas Oil Products, and they brought their own series announcer. The GOAT, as I call him, James Essex, came in. I was still quite a bit green. First time I met James Essex, didn't know anything about him, and did that race with him, the Battle of Bluegrass. And that night he sat me down and he said, "Hey, you're good at this." And I said, "Well, I want to be better." And he's the one who introduced me to the note cards, the driver note cards, which I still do to this day. James still does this day. A lot of announcers have the computers; they have all that stuff. James and I are old school. He says, "Hey, do your name cards."
Those ain't going to turn themselves off.
Yes. And he says, "Get your name cards." He said, "Get these names, get their, the driver's names, where they're from, their sponsors." And he says, "Make sure that you mention those hometowns, because you have somebody sitting in the crowd, that you'll have a driver from Harlan, Kentucky." Somebody goes, "Wait, I'm from Harlan, Kentucky." And then, James and I still have that friendship to this day. Of course, John and Lori ran it for a couple of years. In 2006, that's when Gary Hall, former racer at Atomic Motor Speedway, came in and bought it. And now this is my 22nd year announcing, and it's Gary's 19th year on the track.
I remember talking to Gary one night, and honestly, every picture that I saw of Gary on the racetrack, he was turned backwards.
Yeah.
And one day I found one that he was racing side by side with another, and I went up to him that night and I said, "Gary, I finally found a picture of you racing the right direction." He said, "Of course, order two."
Yeah.
I mean, it was fun. Always fun.
Yeah.
Okay, what would be some of your favorite moments at the track? Just name a few. One of mine is when the late Scott Bloomquist set the track record that night.
Yeah.
I mean, that's one I'll never forget.
That's what's become such a pleasure, and it's become my passion, is dirt track and doing announcing. And of course, I do PR with the Facebook page. But I was actually at Tazewell Speedway in '84, because back then there was no kids. These kids these days, especially my son who's 17, they can't imagine life without social media. And I tell them back then, especially when I was growing up, if I want to know who won at Atomic on Saturday night, unless we knew somebody who had been, we had to wait till the Knoxville News Sentinel came out on Monday, and they would have,
or one of the forums,
or one, something like that. But even back then, even in the '80s, we would have to wait till the newspaper came out. But I remember out at Jim Armwine's shop, they were talking about this long-haired surfer kid out of California that had just moved to East Tennessee. He had raced a couple times, was pretty good, and had went up to Kingsport. Very first time he'd ever been there, when Kingsport was dirt, now it's asphalt. Went up there, first time he ever laid eyes on the place. It was an invitational race. He beat the best names in business. We're talking Freddie Smith, Jack Boggs, Ronnie Johnson. Well, 2 weeks later, they had a big race at Tazewell, and everybody said, "Hey, that Bloomquist guy's supposed to be here." He rolls in his sponsor had rented a limo. He pulls in a limo, gets out. He's got the hair. He's got the charisma. He won that night. I was like, wow. But you're right. Growing up, when I became an announcer in those first few years, and we started having big races, that's when Scott would, he would come to big races. Freddie Smith, who was just one of the greatest ever. And I was like, wow, those are the guys I grew up watching. But yeah, Scott Bloomquist, when Gary Hall took over the track, I think about the third or fourth year, he had some T-shirts made up that said Tazewell Speedway, the fastest 11 seconds of your life. Because back then, super late models were, I think the track record at that time was maybe around 11.2. I think Wendell Wallace had it at that time, 11.2. 11.2, 11.1, somewhere like that. We're like, nobody will ever beat that. And of course, Scott Bloomquist was running with the Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series 2012. They rolled in. Just everything was right that night. Jeff Wolfenbarger, who recently passed away, great loss. He was the car right in front, or came out right in front of Scott. He broke the, he got down into the 10. So it was like a 10.9, I want to say 10.95, and people were like, "Oh my goodness!"
957, I think it was.
Yes, and we're up the, me and James were called at that time. James, he allowed me to, when we did qualify, when they came, when the Lucas Oil did the Tazewell, we would break the qualifying up. He said, "Okay, you two, these two drivers, I'll do the next two drivers." Well, he was the one who had the car, made the call when Jeff Wolfenbarger broke the track record, and like, oh my, and then like, okay, we got to get headset back together. Here comes Scott, and of course, this is the days before we were doing it live. But somebody did have a camera out there, and so he comes around first lap. I think it was, 11.9, and then he came around and just ran the perfect lap, and I was like,
smooth,
yeah, just everything. And then I was like, oh my gosh, he has just broken the track record, and I was, my jaw dropped. And then later on, I guess some of the best moments that I got to be a part of was Scott Sexton, because I grew up watching Scott Sexton, interviewing him.
Hommel.
Got to watch Hommel. We could sit and talk about Dwayne Hommel all night long.
I mean, he rolled in. You just knew.
Yeah.
Got to beat him.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of drivers of my day. Yeah. I've seen a lot of drivers of my day, and there's still a lot of great talent out there. As far as raw talent, Dwayne Hommel, I think, had the best raw talent of any driver out there. Of course, people don't know he had an accident in 2004, had a car wreck on his way back home from the shop, suffered brain damage. Thought for the first few days, wasn't going to make it.
We'd lose him.
Still see Dwayne, still talk to his mom. Dwayne, he'll never be able to drive a race car, even drive a regular car. But when I see Dwayne and talk to him,
he's a blessing.
But he's still there. And when he sees me, he grabs my hand. He can't talk. He can't talk loud anymore. But when I see him, I get down with him, he grabs my hand. He says, "Hey, Brady, it's good to see you." I'm thinking, "No, Dwayne, it's good to see you."
Exactly.
And we'll still talk about racing. And, and I guess my favorite moments, too, are putting my heroes into the Tazewell Speedway Hall of Fame. I'm glad Gary Hall did that.
Loved it.
Jim Armline.
I love taking those pictures, Jim. And you.
Yes. That I fought back tears so much because I was like, this is the reason I'm here. This is the reason I'm doing it. And, of course, now a lot of folks don't realize it, but during the late 70s, early 80s, he was, he earned the name Mr. Tazewell Speedway because they came there to see him, and just to give back to him that night, put him into Hall of Fame was just great.
And to hear the stories about how he got there, I mean, going and digging through some of the throwaways that some people had, and modifying that part to his needs. I mean, he was.
Goldman Burkle was great about it because back in those days, of course, now super late models, when they roll into Tazewell Saturday night, there's a couple of have $1 million toter homes. They pull in, they've got $100,000, easily $100,000 in their race cars. They got $50,000, $60,000 motors. I know of a couple of dirt late model teams that travel. Last year, their tire bill alone was $100,000. But back in those days, back in the glory days, as I call it, they pulled them on open trailers with their pickup truck, their tires.
Didn't know any better.
Didn't know any better. They didn't have fancy shocks. To me, that was the reason that was glory days, because nowadays the cars are so adjustable, and I don't want to say anybody can, but they make these cars so easy to drive that somebody can jump into it. Back then, it was the driver's. He learned the car, but
not just anybody could do it.
Yeah.
If you had big marbles,
yes, exactly. You got to have that, especially at Tazewell Speedway. You're exactly right.
Especially there, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, what's your favorite race? I think mine would be the first half of Tampa. That was such a good race.
That was, and that really put Tazewell Speedway on the map because
got them on TV.
It got them on TV, and man, and these were pre-social media days. Internet email was just starting to get used, and hardly anybody had any computers at home, and so by word of mouth, and they rolled in there. Billy Ogle Jr. won the race. It was just so exciting. Like, wow, Tazewell Speedway's on TV. And then later on, the Lucas Oil Late Model Dirt Series came, and they started doing races on Flow Racing. I was like, wow, So that was memorable too, seeing those big names there.
It was real the beginning of the rise of Tazewell Speedway.
Yes, it
on
really
a national
was.
level.
Yeah, exactly.
Impressive.
Exactly.
Let's remember just a few that we've lost along the way. H. Smith.
Oh gosh, H. Smith they should make a movie about H. He was such a character.
Witty,
always funny,
harsh and witty.
Yes, he had such a good heart. And I know Dad, anytime we would see him at the track, we'd walk in, he'd always ask how you doing, things like that. That was such a tough loss because I don't know if anybody has ever worked hard at that racetrack. And always had a shovel in his hand. I don't know if anybody had a faster shovel than
Nobody made running laps more than he did.
No,
he would
you're
run
exactly
from place
right.
to place with the shovel or whatever he needed.
Yeah, you're exactly right.
He wouldn't walk, he would run.
Yeah, you're exactly
That's
right.
what I remember. Okay, let's talk about Buster Cupp. The favorite memory of Buster is when the dog got loose down in the pits.
Yes.
He run that dog down, picked it up and carried it up the high banks.
Yeah.
And set it out. And I got a few pictures of him carrying that. And it looked so natural. I mean, he was that kind of person, willing to help.
He was, Buster. He's distantly related to me, and of course, him and my dad were good friends. But my dad still is a huge El Camino fan. So for Buster to go out there in El Camino and win in El Camino, it was great. Had the heart attack and we lost him quickly, but yeah, we still think about Buster quite a bit out there.
And your friend and my friend, Chris Collinsworth.
Yeah, that was
what a goofball.
Chris had when I think about him, I think about that smile.
Oh yeah,
Chris just had such a great heart.
And loved to aggravate you.
And I knew him in school. He was a few years older than me. He was he was a midway kid. For those of you who don't know, that I went to Soldiers Memorial. I was TNT. Well, TNT stopped at grade 4, and then we all went on to start 5th grade at Soldiers Memorial Middle School.
Right.
Midway went to 8th grade. Anyway, so they went to 8th grade. So I didn't get to really know him until high school. And then when he started racing, we would start talking, and he worked for Donnie Petty at the time, and was just always such fun to talk to.
He was,
and had a heart of gold. That's the biggest thing I remember about Chris was he had a heart of gold. There was one night, my mom. It was during the fall winter. My mom was going to Middlesboro to do some shopping, and her car broke down. I can't remember for some reason. I think Dad may have been working late that night. But anyway, Mom called me and she said, "Hey, can you come and figure out what's wrong?" I said, "Yeah." And so I went up there and just couldn't get her Jeep started. I said, "We're going to call a tow truck." "Well, nobody's going to come out and get us this time of night." So I said, "Well, hey, let me call Donnie Petty." So we called Donnie Petty, and Donnie said, "Hey, I'm not working a record night." He said, "Well, I'll get Chris up there in a few minutes." Chris came up there and said, "Hey, we'll go out to take it back to the shop." And took it back, pouring the rain. He was, it's cold. So I said, "Well, I'll ride back with you." And so got back to the shop, and I said, "Hey, what owe you? You don't owe me anything." I said, "Chris, no, we'll make up later." And so that was one of the hardest weeks of my life because the day before he passed away, another great friend of mine, Ben Preston, had passed away just unexpectedly. And then I never will forget our good friend Rick Brooks, was a track director at Tazewell Speedway many years. He texted me and said, "Hey, give me a call." I was like, "Okay." And soon as he answered, I knew something was up. He said, "Hey, we heard that Chris passed away." It was just, but yeah, I always remember that big smile. One thing that I never got an answer to was after every race, Chris would always have a red Solo cup. And a couple times
You
I
didn't
asked,
have to ask that
a
question.
couple times I was like, "Hey, what are you drinking that?" "Oh, you can't handle it." I was like, "Okay." And I remember one night I was joking, and I said, "Hey, what you got in that cup?" He said, "Man," he says, "You'll need to know." Or something like that. And there was one night that he said, and I took a sip, and I was like, and I said, "What is that?" He said, "You'll never know." And so I told his wife, his widow, Nora, I said, "Hey, I always want to know what was in that cup." And she said, "Well, one day he'll tell you."
Didn't get that chance.
No.
Yeah, I think one of my favorite moments too, considering this, I took a picture of him in the race car, helmet on, visor up, and he's turned around, give me a thumbs up, and Nora's talking to her.
Yes, that is a wonderful picture.
I treasure that picture.
Yes,
I've lost a lot of memories in this house fire.
Yeah,
and I just wish I had those memories back.
And
they're not gone from the mind, but I can't share with a picture like I could.
And I think we may have. I think I may have that picture saved somewhere. But if you didn't know Chris, just that look on it, that embodied his whole personality. He loved racing. He loved having fun.
He used to get on Facebook and aggravate me just all the time. And out of the blue one day, I said, look, it was in prayer form, actually.
Yeah.
And I said, "Dear Lord," on Facebook, I said, "Would you let the number 77 win just once before I die?" And it was the same week or the week after he won.
Yeah.
And it was it's special.
Yeah.
All right. Tony Horton.
Oh, Tony. Of course, grew up watching him in the modified street days. And I tell people, the late '90s, the modified street, they were hands down the best class in East Tennessee, because back to those days you had Rick Welch, Leonard Bray, Alan Holt, Tony Horton. You never knew who was going to win because they were that good. Yeah. And those cars were just so, I won't say evenly matched. That's just everything worked right. Tony, a lot of people didn't know. Tony was he had a garage up in Sneedville, Greasy Rock, part of Sneedville. He didn't have a lot of money. He didn't have a lot of money. He didn't have a lot of sponsors, so he didn't have the best of equipment. But Tony, every week, hands down, was just he was one of them to beat. And I know that there were a lot of fans. Probably half of Sneedville would show up every time he'd race. So later on, I got to know his sons, Jody and then Jordan, and I got to really know Tony from then. Just what a great heart he had. And it's been probably 5-6 years ago. That's when he kind of hung the helmet up. And about 4 years ago, he was working in a shop and fell and hurt his head. They tried to get him to go to the hospital, and he finally did. And I said, "What happened, Tony?" He said, "Just old age." And he said, "I fell." And I asked Jody maybe the next week to track. I said, "Is your dad doing okay?" He said, "I don't know." He said, "Dad's just
not himself."
He said, "Dad says he's not himself. He says he's just slowing down." So when Tony would show up to the track with Jordan or Jody mostly, I would make a point to go talk to him. At that time, he was on a cane, and I'd go talk to him just because I was like, "Hey, you don't know. I don't know when the last time you get to talk to him."
Right.
And it was the year before last, beginning of the season. I decided, hey, Tony may not be around much longer. And a lot of these guys from the modified street era, At that time, Leonard Bray wasn't doing well. His health was kind of failing. I didn't know at the time that later on he would develop cancer. So I went to Gary Hall and I said, "Hey, I want to put these guys into the Hall of Fame: Rick Welch, Leonard Bray, and then Wayne Overholt, and of course Tony Horton." I said, because, and I explained, Gary didn't, Gary was still racing Atomic in those days, and I told Gary, I said, "Hey, these guys
Built Tazewell.
They built Tazewell Speedway. They filled the stands every weekend
They did.
because it was just such a great class." And I told Gary, I said, "Well, when he said, we'll do it." And I said, "If you will, let me go tell him." He said, "Well, let me tell Rick," because him and Rick were good buddies. I said, "Well, if you'll let me tell Leonard and Wayne and Tony," and never will forget, I called Jody and I said, "I'm going to send you something." And he said, "Just give it to me Saturday." And it was about midway through the season, and I typed up a letter to give to Tony, and it was just saying put him in the Hall of Fame. He goes, "Oh," he said, "he will love this." And at that time,
he earned it.
He earned
all
it.
those guys earned it.
Very much earned it. And then that was the year that that summer that Leonard Bray contracted lung cancer, and I called his daughter Sue, and I said, "Hey,
tragic loss there."
I said, "I've got it." I said, "I got someone. We'll put him in the Hall of Fame." And she said, "Oh, you need to come down and tell him in person." And I've never been one of the most nervous moments of my life. And I walked in, and she had texted me. She said, "He's having a good day. Come by." And that's okay. So I went by his house, and he actually answered the door. He says, "What are you doing here?" I said, "Well, I come to see you." "What you come to see me for?" And I said, I got something I want to talk to you about." And he just kind of looked at me. And Leonard had straightened up a lot, but he still was Leonard Bray. I kept that back in my mind. I said, don't mess around with Leonard Bray. Anyway, went in and sat down, and his wife started just made some soup, beans, and cornbread. And he said, "Do you want something to eat?" And I was like, "No." I said, "I'm good." I said, "I'm getting ready to head out to the track." And he said, "What'd you come see me for?" And so I slid the letter across to him, and he basically said, "It's my pleasure to let you know that you're going to be inducted to the Tazewell Speedway Hall of Fame." As soon as I slid the letter, Star really didn't know I was there either. Yep. And he picked up the letter, and I saw a tear come out of his eye. And he goes, you mean this?" And I was like, "I mean it, Leonard." He goes, "Really?" And I was like, "Yeah." He goes, "Well, Star, next Saturday," he says, "you know where we'll be on that night." And he said, "Brady, I'll be there." And I was like, and as I drove away, of course his sons were there too, but as I drove away, I just broke into tears because I was like, that meant so much to him. It meant so much to Tony that night because Tony loved racing just as much, maybe more than most people, but it meant something to him because not only was he a winner there, he got to see his sons win there. We talked about Jordan. Jordan and Clyde Overholt are the only drivers in Tazewell Speedway history to win a race in 5 different divisions. So that night, I said to myself, "This is probably the last time I get to see Tony." And I told a few people that. So still think about Tony quite a bit. He was such a character.
We had a thing going up. I stayed in turn 2 a lot of times because it was the best lighting on the whole track.
Yeah.
And I got some of my best pictures there. But they fed me. The Hortons fed me.
Yeah.
Would not take no for an answer.
No.
We had anything from steaks to pork chops to hot dogs to hamburgers, and turn 2 for life. They know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, that's true. Another story about Tony I love to tell is about 4 or 5 years ago, my girlfriend and I, Tanya, we I think it was during her spring break, and we were just out riding around. We went up to Virginia, and she said, "Hey, let's just go to Sneedville." And we were just out riding around, and so we came in kind of the way you come over from Virginia. You kind of come in north of Sneedville, and so as we're coming down, I was thinking we're going to be going right by Tony's shop. And I said, "Hey, you mind if I make a stop?" No, I got right ahead.
I
And,
remember when you did that.
yeah,
You posted on
and
Facebook
Tony's
about
little
it, yeah.
shop there in Greasy Rock, Sneedville. It's just maybe half a mile, quarter mile beyond the high school there.
Yep.
Just a little shop, two bays, about the size of your garage here. And a couple of those guys were working. I said, "Hey, is Tony around?" He'll be right back. He went to get some parts. He'll be right back. And when I stepped in, it's the first time I'd ever been in the garage there, and just the trophies everywhere.
Had to be a
His
wall of
trophies,
yes.
Jody's trophies, some of Jordan's trophies, and I was like, "Wow!" And it really hit me then, man.
Yeah, I mean,
And so he came in and he said, "What are you doing up this way?" I said, "Hey, we're just, I told my girlfriend, we're going through Steve. We got combined CU." And just made his day. And I took some pictures of the trophies there. And he was just so proud, proud of his accomplishments, and proud of Jody's and Jordan's as well.
you mentioned Rick Welch. Let me tell you a story about when our house burnt in this very spot. Robbie Whitaker's down here. He was scooping stuff up to dispose of. And all of a sudden he stopped. And he hollered at me.
Yeah.
And he held up this package, still in plastic.
Mm-hmm.
And it was a Rick Welch 5-time championship shirt.
Oh,
The plastic didn't melt. It didn't burn.
yeah. Oh,
And it was just, I mean, it brought back so many memories. And I have the shirt up there, it cleaned up nicely. And that was one of the memories that did get
yeah.
gone during that whole thing. But
yeah.
it was in my desk. It was in a desk drawer.
Mm-hmm.
And everything around the desk, including everything in the drawers,
Yeah.
were gone.
It's just how tough it was.
Robbie lifts this thing up and says, it was something.
I never, when he had, I bet you at that time when they had those T-shirts made up, it seemed like everybody had one. They had to have it's probably a great exaggeration, but it seems like they probably had 1,000 of them printed up.
I went years, maybe a dozen years after he gave them out that year, and we did another article on them, and he had one, and he said, "Did you ever get a shirt?" I said, "I don't remember if I did or not, but I don't think I have it now."
Yeah.
And he said, "I'll give you another shirt." He gave me a license plate.
Yeah.
Well, he signed it for me.
Wow. I never got a shirt back.
And I had it right there on the wall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I never got a shirt back then, but when I knew he was going to be in the Hall of Fame, I reached out to Flora West. Of course, him and Flora are no longer together. And I said, "Hey, would you happen to have any of those shirts?" Or, and she goes, "Yeah." She said, "I've still got some brand new ones." And she said, "I'll bring you one." And I wore it that night that I put him in the Hall of Fame. And he was just so proud. That was such a great moment. Seeing those guys put into the Hall of Fame, the Modified Street guys, because
all the stories about
yes, I was actually. It was trying to think what year it was. It was one of the first years that Rick actually raced, so it had to have been maybe mid '80s, somewhere like that, 85. Anyway, I was young, so 12, 13 years old, maybe a little younger. Anyway, my dad and I went out there and watched the race one night. We were watching it from the stands right in front of the tower where the rail is, and Rick was leading, and I don't remember who he got into the wreck with, but they came as they came out of turn number 4, got into Rick, and somebody, they'll message me and tell me the whole story. But all I remember was Rick started barrel rolling or down the front straightaway. After about the second or third row, the car went up in the air, and I remember his seatbelt had broke, and I remember seeing his arms come out of the car. My dad turned me around because he knew, like, "Hey, I don't want." And I remember him turning me around and pushed me so I didn't see it. Rick was stoned up. He was injured pretty bad that night, but that was one of the memories, and just so many memories of seeing him in that black 18 winning races out there. He was so tough.
Yeah, we forgot to mention Anthony Burgett.
Yes.
That was a heck of a deal.
I was made the call that night. Anthony Burgett, young man out of Harrogate, was in our sportsman division.
Yeah.
back then, the dirt all the way around the speedway was a lot higher on the wall. And right at the end of the back straightaway where we got the fence and then it went to the concrete, the dirt was right there. So it's almost like a ramp.
When race cars get silent, that's a bad thing.
Yeah.
And he went up, turned over upside down, and the car got silent, and everybody was like, "This is bad."
Yeah.
Before it even happened,
and
before it even.
I remember seeing him. He was. Remember seeing him go in the air, and like you said, his car just like slow motion, just went out, and then you couldn't see him because if you don't know Tazewell Speedway, when you go off the back stretch, when you go over the wall, it's just almost straight down. And I remember hearing across the radio, we were just like, "Hey, just stop everything." And the crowd was deadly, just dead silent.
Oh yeah, they was.
Didn't hear anything going on, and then I remember somebody coming across the radio said, "Hey, we called Lifestar. Ambulance is on its way." And I remember, I think I said something on the PA. I said, "Hey, everybody, let's just take a moment." I may have said something about, let's say a prayer for Anthony.
I think
I said, everybody, everybody just be cool for a few minutes. And I remember walking down into the lower pit area, and that's where track director Rick Brooks was.
Yeah.
He had talked to a few other drivers, and he said, "Hey, I think best thing for us to do,
go home.
Let's just go home."
Yeah.
And so I had Brady got the microphone. I said, "Yeah," and and everybody was just so silent.
Yeah.
And I said, "Hey, we're waiting. As soon as we know what's going on or any updates, we'll let you know. But it's best let's just go home tonight."
That was scary that night. Luckily, he was all right in the end.
And came back a few years later and raced again. And actually, we gave him a sportsmanship trophy later on that year during a trophy ceremony. So, yeah.
All right. Let's go to what needs to be done to promote racing at local tracks. In your opinion?
In my opinion, I think, and it's one thing I try to do with social media. I do this Facebook page for the racetrack. What I'm trying to do is I'm trying to reach the kids because I know we have a lot of little league sports, baseball and things like that, but there's kids like me that don't play sports. But I do remember in the 70s and 80s at Tazewell Speedway, the place used to be packed. So the past few years, I've been going to people that used to come out there. Come out there back. And it's like, we have no idea what's going on out there. We had no idea. It's like, hey, we still race there. So I think one thing is that's a great question. And I try to do as much as I can on social media to get the word out there. But I think what it takes too is word of mouth. People. I mean, one thing that I've talked about so much with a good friend of mine, Ben Shelton, who's an announcer. He's also a race director as well. We talked several years ago. Cell phones, social media is the greatest thing that ever happened to racing.
Yes. And
it's also the worst thing. And I say that because, and I'm going to get on my soapbox a little bit here, as back when we were going, back before social media, we would see, we would watch the news. Oh, they're giving a 50% chance of rain for Saturday. Okay. Well, we would go out there. We would, we would still show up. And if it rained out, we'd like, okay. And
there's some good memories about rain and Tazewell.
Yeah, exactly. We'll talk about that moment too. But I remember a lot of times that, that's the way we would go to Atomic. We would go down there. I remember one night, maybe the first year I announced, me and my dad went to a big race down Atomic. And I didn't even have I think I had a flip phone. And they were giving a little bit of rain. But me and Dad get down there, and it was a big race. It might have been a Habit Tampa race or something like that. Right before drivers meet, absolutely poured the rain. We got soaked, but we stopped and ate dinner on the way back. Had a great time. My dad got to talk to a lot of drivers they hadn't seen in years.
Yeah.
But going back to that now is when I put any kind of post out. If there's any chance of rain coming, it's going to rain Saturday. people don't realize what that does.
does a lot of
Because
bad
you
things.
got you got families who are going, well, hey, it may be Monday or Tuesday. Well, hey, what are we doing this weekend? Well, hey, Tazewell's going to have they've got a regular, well, they got a big race coming. So they go to social media and they see the comments. As soon as they see, oh, they're giving rain, they've already got their mind. Oh, they're giving rain. So to the people out there that want to do that, please stop doing that.
That's a good point.
But one thing I want to do is I'd like to see more kids get out there. We have our Kids Nickel Night, which is one of our best nights of the
Candy
year.
tosses.
We do the candy toss. The Nickel Night that we do, I think it's in June this year. We partner up with one of the local banks. First Century Bank has helped us out. We put 20,000 nickels on the front stretch, and the kids come down there. We give them a minute to pick up as many as they can. But that's what I want to see. I'd like to get more. As far as getting more people out, it's just getting the word out, and that's something I need to do more. Is just
Another quick story.
Yeah.
About Tony Horton. Race night was over. I was packing my stuff up over to turn 2, and somebody went up to exit. They got up the top of the hill, and their trailer come loose of the truck.
Yes. Yeah.
And that trailer, what did it do? It found Tony Horton's truck. It hit it right in the door.
Yep. Yeah.
That was one of the memories. That just, Tony looked over at me. He just shook his head. That's all he could do.
That's all you could do.
He just looked at me and he just shook his head.
You mentioned when we have rainouts. For years, us locals that went every week, we knew
you stayed there.
When it rained,
you stayed there to watch.
You stayed there to watch because you had these haulers that with the mostly open trailers. They would park down the bottom. Some of the, like especially Pure Street, the modified street, they would park down the bottom. Well, they would wait, and it was fun just watching them try to get out. I do have a story sometime. We want to talk about Lynn Barnard, who was the principal of I'll go ahead and tell the story. Lynn Barnard was the principal at Soldiers Memorial Middle School. Me and you both went there. You went there, yep. He helped out Jim Arnwine, and of course he always kept an eye on me because you're Jimmy Cupp's son. So anyway, they had a rain out there one night, and Lynn had parked up in the main parking lot, but he had went down the steps to go to the pits there. Well, he wanted to get out, and so nobody was coming out of the pits. Well, he decided that he was going to just walk up the front stretch, or where the flagman stand is. He was going to walk up there and get out there. And Lynn still does. He always dressed kind of nicely. He would come to the track with a polo shirt, maybe a pair of loafers. He wore his loafers that night, which had no traction whatsoever.
No.
And my dad and I watched him. He got about halfway up, and the loafers just gave way. And he was trying to get up through there. He was clawing his way. He was actually digging his way.
For some reason, I remember
it just had... But the leading into that, and it leads into social media. A few years ago, 3 years ago, we had a rain out, and I think we had just got done with qualifying, something like that. Came a rain, and it just ruined the night. Most of the people had gone home. I was packing up my stuff to go home. So anyway, left that night. Next afternoon, I can't remember, somebody can't remember who it was, sent me a Facebook message. Say, hey, are you on TikTok? I'm like, what's TikTok? And they forwarded me a video. There was a young lady, I think she's from Maynardville. Young lady had stuck around, and she was on TikTok. She put her phone up, and about 3 or 4, and I think one of them maybe almost jumped out of there. She filmed about 3 or 4 little drivers. I think one of them was maybe Bubba Long's son, I think he was trying to get out. But anyway, and so she'd put it on TikTok. So by Sunday afternoon, it got like maybe 50,000 views.
Don't doubt it.
I was like, okay, all right. So roll around Monday, same person, excuse me, who had sent it to me, said, have you seen this? I was like, well, you checked it out? And I was like, yeah, look at it now. It had like 500,000 views. By the end of the next week, had over 1 million views.
Yeah, oh yeah.
And I thought, okay, if I could get those kids, because I know it's mainly kids and teenagers watch. I was like, wow,
that's who's on that platform. Yeah,
yeah,
sure.
exactly.
Coming out one night with Jim and Anthony, we were in the box part of the trailer.
Yep.
Car was in there. No, the car was up top. Anthony had drove the car out, and me and my brother was in the back, and had cabinets in it.
Yep.
Jim hit that thing. I think it was Jim driving. Anyway, I'm pretty sure it was. Anyway, we hit that thing, and it come off. I mean, it felt like it jumped 3 foot in the air, and I felt like I was going motionless for a second or so. And then all of a sudden, or gravity freeze, what it felt like. And all of a sudden, he hit. The cabinet doors opened up. My camera fell out and broke.
Yeah.
I mean, but it was one of my favorite memories.
This is so fun.
Okay, what's coming up for race fans at the Tazewell this year?
Of course, we've got a full schedule you can look at. We have it posted on our Facebook page. We can also go to TazewellSpeedway.net. We've already got 2 races in. This is our 60th year of racing, which is just phenomenal because there's a lot of racetracks in East Tennessee have closed their doors. We're still there. Thank you to Gary and Shirlene Hall, everything they've done to keep the doors open there. Saturday night,
and the race fans.
And the race fans. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Without the race fans, we couldn't do it. It's so important, our race fans. We think most of our fans, we think we come from around the area, but we have a great many fans that come from Harlan, Kentucky, Southeast Kentucky, Southwest Virginia. Thank you to the fans for keeping the doors open there, because there's no way we could do it. But this Saturday night, our biggest paying event of the year, it's our 5th annual Little Bill Corps Memorial. That's with the Shapers Oil Southern National Series, $21,000 to win. Some of the best super late model drivers in the nation will be there. Don't have a full list here. People ask me, especially around this time, today, you got a list on who's coming?
Yeah.
I know some that are coming, but I always tell people, hey, if I put out a list of drivers that we think are coming, you're going to come. That driver's not going to show up. You're going to blame me. Of course, we have our local divisions too. We'll have Sportsman, Classic Car, Street Stocks Racing. Also, the guy Ray Cook, the director and owner of the Shapers Oil Southern National Series, he is promoting a 100-lap enduro race that will be after all the races done Saturday night. If you're not familiar with the enduro, it's basically the
how many laps?
Cars. 100 laps.
Oh my God! I thought you said 100. Wow.
100 laps. It's not really purpose-built race cars, but it's basically you bring a stock car, a stock motor, stock transmission. It's almost like a demolition derby on an oval track.
Survival to the fittest.
Yeah. You got to have a full roll cage, things like that. Yeah. It'll go 100 laps. Only way, of course, I haven't seen the full rules, but usually with an enduro, you don't throw a caution unless somebody is actually blocking the track. Then you just pull them out of the way. Yep. If you're leading and
the cars stay on the track, right?
Cars stay on the track. They absolutely do, unless it's just leaking oil or something like that, safety. But if you're leading at 50 laps, you run out of gas, you come in and get gas and go back out. But basically, the car leading at 100 laps gets $2,500.
That's good. Talk about ticket prices this week and a regular season race ticket.
Our regular season race for regular night is $12 for adults. Kids 9 and under are free for those. For our regular shows, our pit admission is $25 to get in there. Now, this weekend, with it being a big paying race, the general admission will be $30. Kids 12 and under for that will get in free. The pit admission for adults is $45 and $35 for kids 12 and under.
Okay, I'm going to give you the last word. Say anything you want to say to wrap us up.
Appreciate all you have done for sports. You and I go all the way back. I think the first time I met you was in the vocational building, Claver County High School. We both had Mr. Whitaker for drafting.
Loved him. Yes.
Then, of course, got to know you more at the racetrack. Thank you so much for all you've done. Not only, of course, you were our photographer Tazewell Speedway for many years and shared a lot of those memories I have. But just what you've done for all of Claiborne County sports and still do. It's just a pleasure to not only catch up with you.
Yeah.
It's a pleasure to be here talking about Tazewell Speedway and my memories from there.
All right. Thanks. Once again, thanks for coming down. I know it's a long
I
way down.
appreciate it.
All right, this is episode 15. We're coming to an end. Once again, I have to thank my marketing partners and First Century Bank for communications as always. And please be sure to follow the Zone, Claiborne County Sports Zone, on both Facebook and YouTube. We have a lot of memories of sports and race and demolition derbies and stuff. A lot of memories there, and just appreciate you watching. Best of luck to you, Brady,
Thank you.
thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time. God bless.